How the shooting death of 14-year-old Brett Wittner was a big mystery in Washington Parish, and almost 13 years later, it still is.
But earlier this year, our David Hammer investigation raised new serious questions about the original investigation. Now, David's getting answers. Joining us in the studio with a major update, David.
Yeah, Katie and Shrews, we're finally getting answers in this difficult case. The Washington Parish Sheriff reopened Brett's case after experts we consulted from around the world found evidence that Brett might have been shot twice in the head. The coroner agreed to exhume Brett's remains in August and sent them for new forensic studies. Here's what they found. From the horrifying moment in February 2012, when Donna Wittner learned her 14-year-old son had been shot in the head at a sleepover with 7 other teens in this house in rural Washington Parish, she has not trusted the investigation.
My son was murdered. It's time that people do their jobs.
Washington Parish Sheriff's detectives found Brett Wittner had been shot in the head, behind the right ear, with a long-barrel 22-gauge rifle nearly as long as his arm.
There's no way possible that Brett could have pulled the trigger on that gun, especially being shot execution style.
They found 2 shell casings at the scene, but only accounted for 1 bullet. Then there was the 911 call.
911, what is your emergency?
It didn't come in until 36 minutes after witnesses told police the deadly shot was fired.
If someone was shot at my house, I would call 911 immediately.
And then there was the autopsy. It was done 3 days after the shooting by the current coroner of St. Tammany Parish, Dr. Christopher Tape, back when he was a private pathologist. Tape said Brett probably shot himself accidentally.
Accidents don't have 2 shell casings.
Tape recovered a bullet from inside Brett's head and weighed it. It weighed almost as much as a whole bullet. Less than 10% of it had broken off. Now, during Brett's autopsy, Tape and his team peeled back his scalp and reported finding the bullet lodged in a hole in his skull here, above and in front of his left ear. But we reviewed Brett's CAT scans and x-rays taken when he was still alive at the hospital 3 days before the autopsy. Those images showed a trail of bullet fragments through Brett's brain, and they showed the bullet, not where Tape said he found it, but in the far back of Brett's head. We showed these images and autopsy photos to experts around the world in radiology, ballistics, and gunshot wounds. They all felt Brett must have been shot not once, but twice.
The first bullet left Brett unconscious. So there was a second shot from someone, which was the bullet that killed him eventually.
It wasn't conclusive, but it was enough for new Washington Parish Sheriff Jason Smith to reopen the case. 2 bullets totally changes the equation, if that is accurate.
Yeah, without question. I mean, 2 bullets, it's a murder without question.
In August, Washington Parish Coroner Roger Kasama and his Chief Deputy Paul Thibodeau exhumed Brett's remains for a new autopsy in Texas and an anthropological study of Brett's skull at LSU's Faces Lab. Now, after 4 long months of waiting and wondering, Donna Wittner would finally get the results of the new tests on her son's remains. What are your hopes, concerns going in to meet with the coroner?
Finally, everything will be solved, and me and my family will get closure, and I won't have to be on the case anymore.
Dr. Kasama said he had read the reports and had made his decision, a single accidental gunshot wound.
This is my final report. You agree or disagree, but this is it. This is what I'm going to sign in the death certificate.
Thibodeau explained there were no signs of damage to the back of Brett's skull.
There's no indication of a secondary gunshot wound.
But then Donna Wittner started asking questions.
Why do I have a CAT scan with a bullet in the back of his head?
The pathologists have all reviewed it. We've had multiple pathological agencies review it, and they all agreed with the same assessment.
Our experts also had unanswered questions. First, how did the bullet travel from here under Brett's scalp to here while he was still alive, and then end up back here 3 days later at the autopsy? Thibodeau offered a theory.
With a person being moved and a projectile being under the skin, it is possible for it to migrate.
But retired neuroradiologist Dr. John Spar disputes that.
No, I can't believe it would migrate back like that underneath the scalp. The scalp is tightly adherent to the skull, and for something just to do it under gravity because he happens to be laying on his back, it just doesn't sit with what I know.
The second unanswered question, what about all those bullet fragments visible in the CAT scans and X-ray images? Our ballistics expert used a formula to calculate that those fragments were way more than what was missing from the recovered bullet, and could have even added up to a whole other bullet.
The fact that they said there's almost a full bullet, but there's all these bullet fragments, it just doesn't go along with a single bullet.
But the new examinations found no bullet fragments with Brett's remains. Dr. Kasama said the evidence might have been lost.
And in the process of transporting the body, examining the body, those fragments could have been washed, taken away, and that's why when it was taken, you could not see them.
Eventually, Kasama came to admit he wasn't so sure anymore and kept Brett's manner of death as undetermined.
Because there's a lot of questions still, just like what I said, in forensic medicine, it's supposedly an exact science. There's still a lot of things that cannot be answered.
In a way, it was the worst possible outcome. For Dr. Pan Stephanopoulos, a gunshot wound expert for the Greek army who hoped Donna Wittner's fight would finally end.
I'm afraid that the current evidence is not sufficient. I'm sorry to say that.
For Sheriff Smith, who made it his first order of business as sheriff to reopen the case.
You know, it was important to me to order the exhumation, or at least get the coroner to order the exhumation so that we can move forward on this. We just didn't get the result that we wanted in terms of a definitive conclusion. I'm not saying that we can't get there, but we're just not there as of today.
And most importantly, for a tortured mother who finds herself still on her son's case almost 13 years later.
What do you need to see at this point to be more satisfied, if that's possible?
Something besides undetermined.
Even if it is determined to not have been murder?
Either way, just leaving it open is not closure.
Now, as we said, there were serious inconsistencies in the original investigation, and Donna Wittner wants Washington Parish Sheriff's detectives to go back and question the witnesses again. Sheriff Smith agrees there were serious mistakes made in 2012, long before he became sheriff, but he can't justify using investigative resources without more definitive proof that Brett was shot twice. Charisse?
All right, David, thank you so much for that update.